somebody chose to walk away from me, and they decided that their life would be better without me in it. They decided checking up on me wasn't something that they cared to do. They didn't care what was going to happen down the line. That's not somebody that deserves my love. That's not somebody that deserves any level of access to me. And for that reason, I don't want it. Welcome to another episode of A Chance to Strive. I am your host, Chance Strive. The one thing I'll say is I definitely love when you guys make my content. It's like a lot of the times I constantly search through my DMs just to see the questions that you guys are going to give me. And then at a certain point, I'm like, okay, this might actually be content that I talk to everyone, because since I feel like so many people relate to this, a lot of people might benefit from the answer. So pretty much the answer somebody asked me, well, I guess I'll start with the title of the episode first. The title of the episode is Closure When Left on the Edge. And pretty much the reason why I named it that way is I feel like a lot of the times we all look for closure. Whether you stop messing with like a family, whether you stop messing with a friend, and most of the times when you stop messing with somebody that you're actually dating. And I've gone through this myself, where it's like you're dealing with somebody and you're investing so much of your energy and everything like that into them. And then all of a sudden, everything just stops because they choose to walk away from you. And you're not necessarily sure what happened. And then that's when the overthinking starts, because you're trying to come up with like so many different reasons, because in your mind you thought everything was completely okay, but clearly they didn't feel the same way. So yeah, the person pretty much asked me like, yo, what do you do when you need closure but the person isn't there to give you that closure? And I think for me, it's like the worst part is just not knowing. Like, you just want an answer. It doesn't matter if like that person were to talk to and tell you, oh, they hate you or they found somebody new. It's like no matter what it is, you just want something. This may sound weird, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like you want something to break your heart. Like, you don't want to have to like go through so many different reasons, constantly overthinking, trying to figure out what it is that you did wrong. I feel like for me, it's hard for me to blame the person that I'm into. Like, when I really care for somebody, it's hard for me to point my fingers at them. So whether or not I know they are in the wrong, whether or not I know like I had nothing to do with it, and even if I know like what they did was just flat out wrong, I'll make excuses for them. I'll give them benefit of the doubt. I'll try to be understanding. I'll create random scenarios in my head that pretty much tries to justify what it is that they did, just because like I don't want to make them that person. Like, I don't want to make them that villain. Like, this is somebody I love. And as much as like I should prioritize the love that I have for myself, the way that I should be treated and everything like that, when you really care for somebody, you become blind to a lot of shit. And it's almost nothing you can do. It's like the moment you let yourself slip and you start really being into them, that's just part of what comes along with it. You start to have a weakness for that person. You create a little sweet spot. No matter like how much pride and everything you have, like all of that gets thrown out the window when you're in love with somebody. And I'm pretty much probably going to end up breaking this into like two different segments, because like something else I wanted to talk about. The second part is going to be like, I guess we can call it a Valentine's Day special, because I know how to like mix it into that. And once I get to that part, y'all understand. But the reason why I really wanted to answer this question, like I already said, is like a lot of people ask this. And for me, it was really hard for me to figure it out. Like, how do I find closure? Like, how do I move on when I don't even know the reason why I should move on from the past situation? And like I said, the overthinking part is one of the biggest ones. But at a certain point, I realized you didn't need that. Like, you could still find that closure, but it wasn't going to come from that person. And I know a lot of the times it's like we want to hear it directly from them. We want to hear their words. But if you don't have that choice, are you just going to tell yourself like, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to sit in this mind state where it's kind of like I'm constantly running through ideas and I'll never end up knowing the reason why they left, never knowing the reason why they walked away. Like, was it me? Was I not good enough? And I realized that does nothing for me. I don't like investing so much energy into something that's not positive. Like when you're constantly sitting there and talking down on yourself, like, how much do you really want to do? Like, think about it. When a lot of people decide, you just sit in your bed, and I generally don't want anybody to put me in a position where I feel like I take so much focus away from myself, like the self-love that I want to give to myself. It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing around me. At the end of the day, I got to keep that true to myself. And as much as like I want to hear it from that person, I know that's no longer a choice. And it's at that point where I got to realize it's like, yo, like maybe that is the closure that I needed. They chose to walk away from me. even though you invested so much of yourself into that person. And like I said, I know it's easy to point the finger back at yourself. I know it's easy to blame yourself. But you will never be enough for the wrong person. And I think that's something a lot of people fail to realize. It doesn't matter how much you do. If somebody is incapable of seeing your worth, or if somebody is in a state where they can actually accept love from somebody else, no matter how much you give that yourself to that person, no matter how much sacrifices you make for them, even if you treated them in a way where like anybody would be grateful for it, it won't matter. And that's the thing that I realize. It's like that person walking away is them telling you, my life is better without you in it. What else do you need to hear from that person? I think like the decision they chose to make told you everything you needed to know. But the thing is, like I said, when you really love a person, at times, even if something's right in front of you, you choose to ignore it. You become blind to it. The reason why you keep that thought lingering around is because you don't want to let go of it. As much as like you can start hating the thought of them, the reason why you're still thinking about them, the reason why you're this stuck on them, and sometimes the reason why you're that angry is because of how much you actually love them or how much you actually decided to care for that person. But it's like, and then another part of the equation that I realized that I failed to understand at times when I was in that situation, I didn't think about what position that person might have been in. And what I mean by that is, I was talking to somebody and it was a similar situation. And it was a person that chose to walk away. And I'm like, why did you choose to do that? And then after our conversation, I realized the fact that for certain people at times, if they're in a position where they are incapable of loving themselves, where they are incapable of seeing their own worth, it's hard for them to try and love somebody else. Like I said so many times throughout my TikToks, Instagram, and even on this podcast itself, before you decide to go and love somebody else, love yourself first. Because like I said, when you go and love somebody else, right? The thing is, you will never know what's fully in their mind. You will never know their true. There's no way you can ever be 100% sure about what anybody else is thinking. You can never be 100% sure about their intentions. Like, yes, their intentions could be pure, but at the end of the day, the reason why certain people get played is because somebody can put up a facade and play it so well to the point where you start believing in it. And if you are incapable of loving yourself, where you are always pretty much 100% sure about things, at times whether you are incapable of figuring it out or not, or putting your finger on it, you know what you're thinking at every single moment. If that person that you know like the back of your hand, you can't bring yourself to love them, how can you start loving somebody else? Where at times it's hard to know a person within a year. It takes time to get to know like every single part of them. And the thing is, like, when a person is incapable of loving themselves, it's hard for them to love anybody else, because it's like I said, if you can't show that love to yourself, at times for somebody else, it's not even about the fact that they can't show somebody else love. They don't want to. And it may sound selfish and it may sound fucked up, but it's not. If I was in a position where I wasn't happy with myself, it would be hard for me to be appreciative of the person that's around me that's constantly doing things for me. And the reason for that being is, like, if I don't look at myself in a certain light, it will be hard for me to believe that you look at me in that same light. Because if I believe like there's nothing worth loving about myself, how can I believe that somebody's going to love that part of me? I think a lot of things come from insecurities. Like, that person, they don't love themselves. They are very insecure about the way things are. And it's hard for you to show somebody their worth. That's the whole reason why it's called self-love. It doesn't have to do with anybody else but that person. And if that person doesn't see it, it's hard for them to trust that you'll see it, because they don't know what it is that you see. And no matter how much you try to reassure them, how much you try to tell them, at the end of the day, they're going to go back to the part where it's like, I don't believe that I'm worth that love. In the second segment, but yeah, before I actually close this off, but yeah, the one thing that I do want to say is, like, if you end up being in a situation, no matter how much it hurts, you have to let go of trying to find closure from that person. I think it's almost embarrassing. Like, when I look at it, like, a lot of the times when you're in a situation, you're really sad over somebody. Sometimes later down the line, you'd be like, yo, what the fuck was I thinking? Why was I this stuck on this person? Like, they did not deserve that. I think a lot of the times you have to remind yourself that as the situation happens. Somebody chose to walk away from me, and they decided that their life would be better without me in it. They decided checking up on me wasn't something that they cared to do. They didn't care what was going to happen down the line. That's not somebody that deserves my love. That's not somebody that deserves any level of access to me. And for that reason, I don't want it. Okay, so the next part of the segment that I wanted to talk about, to be completely honest, is like, this is something I think about all the time. And it's something I'll constantly talk to my friends about. And for the most part, every single time, it's a dope conversation, and everyone tends to have like a lot to say about it. So I'm like, it must be a pretty relatable topic then. And it's very relevant because Valentine's Day was yesterday, I think. Yeah, I didn't really celebrate that. But so the thing is, I realized in a lot of relationships, the thing is for me, it's like a lot of people will call me an old soul, right? A lot of the times in high school, I was that person where I would have not even like I would talk to my teachers, but it's like I genuinely had bonds. I'll go back to my high school and I'll literally like go back to visit, and getting to see all these teachers, they're like, oh my God, you're doing so great. And it's like, and the part that is like actually like the best part about going back to my high school, knowing the fact that people from my high school know me. Like I went in to visit a few classes and actually speak to them. Like some people, oh, aren't you that kid from TikTok? I'm like, oh, what the heck? And then like some of my teachers, guidance counselors, see me, and like they knew that I did like the whole social media thing. They were like, I heard you doing pretty well. I'm like, I mean, I'm trying. Like that school was like not the best school, but I feel like the one thing that I got from it was like a lot of wisdom from people that were older than me. Okay, now that we're done with that part, me just like visiting like the little nostalgia thing. But the thing is, since a lot of people do tend to call me an old soul, a lot of the times I'll think about how relationships were back in the day. You know, like before this, I think like the biggest difference when it does come to relationships, right? I think a lot of things changed, but I think what's made relationships look completely different. And at times I'll speak to somebody who's like really like from like really back in the day. And then the one thing they'll tell me is like, they don't even understand how relationships work nowadays. Like, it's like for them, it's like how we date is completely different from how they dated. Like, of course, each generation, no matter which aspect of it you look at, there's going to be some negatives and there's going to be some positives. I think back in the day, the one thing that I didn't really like was like the arranged marriages. That is a thing in certain cultures, and I completely respect certain cultures for doing that. I'm not judging anybody that does that. For me personally, I just don't understand the idea that you put somebody in front of me and I'm supposed to love them. That's the part about back in the day I didn't appreciate. But I think like the biggest difference for me is social media. And this is where it leads into what I actually want to talk about. And I think the thing that social media does is, because you have access to so much, you have access to so many people's highlight reels. That's what I think social media is. You'll never find somebody that really like posts everything. Like they posted the times they failed and everything like that. It's like people post their highlight. You go on social media, it's a way for you to celebrate. You post a picture, the only reason why you post it is probably because you really love the outfit or because you look great. In other words, it's something you want to highlight. Social media is a highlight reel. And a lot of people get stuck comparing their everyday life to other people's highlight reels. And the part where, since we were talking about relationships, I still want to stay on that topic. I realized because you have so much access to a lot of things, and this applies to both men and women, but I will mainly say women because that's where I feel like it tends to be like most thing, like most a little more popular. I think a lot of people, because they have access to seeing so much, feel so entitled to the little things that they see going on around them. Like the idea that a way for you to treat somebody is a trend is ridiculous to me. Like the thing is, I know certain relationships, and I know some of my guys have gone through this and stuff like that. Multiple of my guys have gone through this, where it's kind of like they've been with a certain girl, right? And the thing is, in a relationship, when you're supposed to give that person your unconditional love, your loyalty, your consistency, all the little things, in my opinion, I think they tend to apply to those things, the little compromises and everything like that. Materialistic things are not something that anybody should feel entitled in. Whether or not you have somebody that chooses to spoil you every single day, where they choose to spend money on 24/7, at the end of the day, that should never be a requirement. And just because you see Dirk putting like VVs on his shorty, like, and everything like that, doesn't mean you need a guy to do exactly that for you. A lot of people, they get stuck in these trends, and they get stuck in like this little relationship goals, like, and all this little cute shit, to the point where you believe that's what a relationship looks like. And for me, that just doesn't make sense. A relationship, like, there's no one way for a relationship to be. In my opinion, relationships are literally all about somebody's compatibility. It's about understanding somebody's love language and how that person receives their love. When all of those things work, it works. But the materialistic shit that some people start feeling entitled to is bullshit. Because, like, even on a date, the reason why I've said, like, Valentine's Day popped this topic for me is, like, certain people, like whether it's like certain guys or certain girls, well, certain women, some people won't be appreciative of what their partner is giving them simply because they understand someone out there is getting something a little better. And it's like, I completely understand that, but there's just like this little thing everybody used to say, right? Like, oh, he gave you 20 while he had 100. But I gave you 20 and that was all, or like I gave you 5 and that was all that was in my pockets. Just understanding, like, for me, it's not about how much somebody's able to give me. It's not about how much, like, they do everything so perfectly. For me, it's always been about the level of effort that's being put in. If the person is trying their hardest with everything that they got, that's enough for me. Somebody can provide all of this little extra shit and not give a single fuck about you. And I think a lot of people, it's like, because you're so stuck about relationship goals and everything like that, some people really start thinking that that is all there is to relationships. You don't see the constant arguments. You don't see the heartbreaks. You don't see the lies, the compromises, the long conversations you got to sit through to overcome something that you guys are going through. Like, people forget that part. And then the moment they don't get what they want, like, this, like, people building something with somebody is not something they want. Like, you're dating a certain guy, a certain woman will be like, oh, I expect you to be able to do this. I expect you to be able to pay for that. Like, how you going to say you going to, this is a post I've literally seen. It was like, how you going to talk about you going to spoil me, but my nails cost me $60 and I get them done every 2 weeks. My hair costs $150. And it's like, why are we listing prices when we're talking about relationships? I get you saying, oh, you don't want somebody that's unmotivated. You don't want somebody that lacks passion, that lacks dreams, aspirations and stuff. But when it's, oh, if you lack money, I don't want you. If you're broke, I don't want you. It's like, you're judging somebody about how much money they have, and they're in their 20s. Like, that makes no sense. Like, y'all expect everybody to have it figured out in their 20s. In my opinion, I think that's why there's so many scammers out there. Like, because everybody wants the quick money. It's like the easiest way to get it. And it's like, I'm not going to lie to you, if you guys go to parties and everything like that, you'll understand, like, scammers are the ones that have fun. The people going to Miami every other weekend, they're affording it a certain way for a reason. But I just think it's really childish how a lot of people start expecting certain shit in relationships just because it's a thing in somebody else's relationship. I think, like, that's the thing that just kills this generation, the comparison. Because you have so much that's accessible to you. You don't even know what it is that you want. A lot of people don't know what they want. Literally, they just go on social media, they see trends, they see relationship videos, and they're like, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want that. And also another part that I don't even want to get into, because I feel like this could be a whole episode in itself. Expecting your ex and your new partner. Bro, I don't think you understand how much it hits somebody's pride when you're telling them something that they need to do better at, and then you bring up the fact that somebody you used to be with did it, so there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to do it. I'll speak about it from a guy's perspective. I personally have never gone through this shit. Like, somebody tell me, you should do this because I promise you, if I'm ever in a relationship where that person does that to me, I'm breaking up with you on the spot. I know I just said a whole lot about, like, compromises, understanding, working for it. But the thing is, I know for a fact I would never do that. And I know for a fact if I did it to that person, they would hate the fact that I brought it up. The thing is, when I'm with anybody I've ever been with, they have not appreciated any time I've just randomly popped up my ex's name. And to use your ex's name as a way to tell me that I'm not doing good enough, that, in my opinion, that's just disrespectful. Because there's so many different ways you can choose to go about bringing certain shit up. And then the other part is just like, you're not dumb. There's no way you thought you were going to tell me I got to get better at this. And that could have been it. You could have just said, hey, I think we should work on this. That would have been fine. what the fuck is the point of you bringing your ex's name? Why are you still thinking about him? Certain shit like that is kind of like, oh, but it's only they popped the name once. Yeah, but then if that's the first, that there's no way that could have been the only time they thought about their ex when you fucked up. Like, I'm all set. The fact that this is still something that is fresh in your mind, you're still thinking about how that relationship went and everything like that, I'm all set. And this is the time where, guys, I really love you guys, but I actually do have to get to class. I just want to say I really appreciate you guys. I hope you guys are having an amazing day, an amazing week, wherever you're listening to this from. If it's on any listening platforms, please hit that download. And if you guys are on YouTube, subscribe. And even to anybody who's listening, just go show some love on there. But remember something. Show love to yourself. Oh, yeah, and my merch is going to drop soon. We've been working on that, and everything's actually going to come in soon. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. But yeah, I want everybody to have an amazing week. And remember, you're worth the love that you try to give them.